Our agenda for today, just that, thank you again. I am Natalie Van Dyke. I am the Director of Sales for Renewable Energy and Sustainability Strategies with ElectraTherm, which is based in Atlanta, Georgia, but we are a global company. Just a quick overview of our agenda today. We have done the introductions. We will be discussing, obviously, the USDA REAP program today and potential funding, and how K.E. Andrews is going to assist amazingly with those grant applications for anyone. We did say that this is for biochar, but truthfully, it's much wider than that. It includes biomass and other efficiency projects. Macy and Caitlin are going to guide you through that in a very more specific way than I am going to, but do know that this has a reach far beyond biochar only, okay? So please don't think that this is just limited to that. They will talk about those eligibility requirements, and again, we will finally do the answered questions at the end. So just jumping in, what is ElectraTherm? For those of you who are possibly new to it, we are the global leader in what's called organic Rankine cycle systems, okay, which essentially is a heat recovery technology. If there is waste heat, that is essentially energy that is being lost. What we do is we are able to grab that heat, pull it back, turn it back into usable electricity. So I like to say we turn heat back into dollars, okay? It's one of the things we're very good at. We are supported by the Bitzer Group, which is the largest manufacturer or largest privately held manufacturer of refrigeration and air conditioning compressors in the world. They are based outside of Stuttgart, Germany. ElectraTherm as a technology, we have more than 100 installations worldwide across 14 countries. And we have more than 2.5 million operating hours in the fleet for our technology. So we are not a new technology. We are not cutting, or we are not experimental. This is not an at-home project. This is a tried, true, very proven technology for renewable energy, and it is also in line with solar and wind technology. It is considered at the same level in terms of its renewability. Okay. How does it work? What is the organic Rankine cycle? Essentially, what we have built is an appliance. At the heart of it is an appliance, and it is based on the refrigeration loop, the refrigeration technology run in reverse. Okay. So what we do is we are able to bring energy to us via a hot water circuit. So any heat source that exists, if we can take that heat through a heat exchanger or some other force, or if it's already in hot water, we place that into hot water and we bring it to our machine. Okay. From there, it interfaces with a plate heat exchanger, and that excites a refrigerant inside of the machine, okay, and brings that refrigerant to a boil. That under pressure then creates a vapor, okay, that is fed into a twin screw expander. What is an expander? An expander is a compressor run in reverse. That's why we're aligned with the compressor company. The heart of our technology is an expander, which is a compressor run in reverse. It excites, that creates mechanical work that is aligned with an in-house generator, which turns it into electricity, and that turns electricity out. Now, on the other side, we do in fact have a cooling water circuit, okay, and that creates the pressure differential. So we have hot water coming in on one side and cold on the other, and that creates a pressure differential inside of the ORC, which just moves around repeatedly, okay? So we are relying on the thermodynamics associated with that hot moves to cold. High pressure will go to low pressure, and it will just continue to do that. It will move through that expander. It will create the mechanical work that moves that generator, and that is how ORC works. If we didn't have this application, if you did not put that appliance there, That would just be hot temperature that is lost. It's lost forever. That energy is lost. It's no longer utilized. It's just an inefficiency. We are grabbing it back. We are utilizing it. We are creating a renewable electricity for it that can be utilized as base load at a location, or in some select instances, it can actually be exported back to the grid. Okay. Very simple technology, very relatable, and I compare it very much, again, I cannot say this strongly enough. This is an appliance. It's similar to the refrigerator in your kitchen. Once you set it, put the refrigerator in your kitchen, you bring water to your ice maker, you plug it into the wall, and it just sits there and works. Ours is the same way. You bring the appliance in, you bring hot water to the circuit, you plug it into a 480 volt motor rated circuit breaker, which is all we need in order to get it up and running. And then it will just sit there, and it will take that hot water, and it will take the cold water, and it will just create electricity. It will just sit there and do what it needs to do. Very reliable, very proven, very easy to deploy. Okay, so those are the types of technology that we're talking about today that can be utilized with these biomass applications that are in fact eligible for the REAP grant. So, and with that, I'm going to get to the part that most of you are here for, which I think is, how does that REAP grant work? Oh, excuse me. The last thing, thank you for that slide. There is a temperature differential. There is a temperature zone that we work in, and that is, in fact, the 150 to 300 degree Fahrenheit technology or temperature zone. We can create energy between 75 kilowatts to 150 kilowatts, and coming soon a 300 kilowatt unit. Okay, those are the energy levels that we can create. But we do need to be in this temperature zone for the hot water, so 150 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. With that being said, we can collect that heat from an exhaust gas source. Generally speaking, how much exhaust do we need? That's a matter of flow rate. But if we can get an exhaust gas somewhere in the 600 degree Fahrenheit range or higher, we certainly have something to work with and talk about. Okay. It should be noticed that for pyrolysis and biochar specifically, that 150 to 300 degree Fahrenheit is exactly where most of those applications run. So this is a very, very good pairing for biochar, but it also works very reliably in a host of other biomass applications, including boiler applications, which we have literally dozens of throughout the UK and Europe. We are heat agnostic, truly. If there is heat and we can collect it, we can likely put an organic Rankine cycle on it and create electricity. Okay. Now, with that being said, now I will turn it over to Caitlin Glenn to discuss the particulars of the REAP grant and how all of you can take advantage of that in the very short window of time that we have. So act quickly. Caitlin, it's all yours.
Thank you, Natalie. We at K.E. Andrews, we appreciate our friendship with ElectraTherm and especially with Natalie and Ashley. Thank you for putting this webinar together so that we can distribute the information so that the attendees here can hopefully secure that funding from the REAP USDA program. I see some familiar names on the attendee list, so maybe some of you have attended our past webinar on the investment tax credit for the biomass industry, and welcome back. And if you're new and did not watch that investment tax credit webinar, we invite you to watch the recording and we can distribute that link after this today. The reason that's important is that I think we have some questions already from the group that we'll address later on in the session, but the REAP grant can be layered with the investment tax credit. And there's some nuances to timing and strategy around implementing and starting construction on your project within 2024 2024 to claim the ITC. And then also the deadlines for the REAP grant, which is September 30th. And so just ensuring that companies are implementing strategies so that they can secure both of them if that is their intention. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but if you have more questions, you can always reach out to me or Macy directly. Another thing I wanted to go over today is we're going to be going over the grant. So some of you are familiar with the REAP program, and maybe you have participated in the loan program. Macy and I are specialists on the grants, but if you are interested in the loans, your USDA rep or local ag bank can help you with that process because that's a little bit different than the grant. So I just want to preface that today we're going to be covering the grant, not the loan. So K.E. Andrews is a privately held company. We're headquartered at Dallas. We have coverage across the United States. We offer various state and local tax services such as property tax, sales tax, severance tax. Macy and I are part of our credits and incentives practice, which essentially finds public funding for various companies and industries. We really have loved the biomass industry and the ORC application because the production of electricity opens the door for so many different funding applications. Biomass in itself would not qualify necessarily for the REAP grant, but you add the ORC to create electricity from that renewable source. There you go. Now you qualify for the REAP grant. So we're going to go into all of the specifics on that throughout the course of this session. Macy is our technical expert, and she's one of our grant writers. And so she's actually going to get down into the weeds, and then I'll ask some questions throughout to maybe get some more clarification on some of the topics. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Macy to get the REAP discussion started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Like Caitlin and Natalie mentioned, we're just very thankful for our partnership with ElectraTherm, and we're excited to bring this funding opportunity to your attention and to discuss it further with you all. So what is the REAP? The Rural Energy for America program is a USDA-funded program that can offer grants or, like Caitlin mentioned, loans to companies making an investment in renewable energy systems or making an investment in energy efficiency improvements. And like Caitlin mentioned, today we're going to be focusing on the grant funding. Both the renewable energy systems and the energy efficiency improvements qualify for the grant, and ElectraTherm's ORC and pyrolysis system fit really good under the renewable energy system definition. So who qualifies? Some businesses or all businesses qualify, but you have to be a small business in a rural area. So what does that mean? They're going to determine small business based off of your NAICS code. So depending on what NAICS you fall under, you would have to determine if that fits the small business definition. And then a rural area is defined by an area that has 50,000 or less people by the most recent census data. So this seems like a great opportunity. One catch is that if you're a startup company doing an energy system, you have to have 100% commitment of funds already. So you can't receive this grant without already having funding to complete the project. So they're really looking for projects that are technology ready and are ready to be invested, and then they want to come in and reimburse you at the end of that project to help with those startup costs. So it's not money up front, it's money on the back end.
Macy, I have a question on that, on project. So what if you're putting into like a wood pellet plant and you're pretty much done with that, but you haven't added the ORC element? How would you qualify there? How does that work?
So you would qualify in that case because the ORC element is what's qualifying you. So we could submit an application for the ORC, and that would be deemed a renewable energy system that's going to be implemented in your facility. But you can't spend any money on that ORC until the application is completed and submitted to your local USDA rep.
So in the course of this presentation, the word project is synonymous with the ORC investment, correct?
Yes, so it's going to be synonymous with the ORC investment or the qualifying system if you don't fit that ORC definition.
All right, thank you.
Of course. And that kind of covered our what does started mean question. But what started means is when the invoices are paid on the qualifying equipment or system. What's the deadline to apply? As mentioned before, it's coming up quickly. It's September 30th. They do offer quarterly deadlines, but the sooner the better, in our opinion. We like to get our applications in as soon as possible. It frees up you to start on your project sooner, and it allows you to meet that ITC deadline.
So, and by started and invoice paid, so you haven't started, meaning that you could have placed your order for your ORC equipment. You just can't have paid the invoice yet, correct?
That is correct. If that invoice is paid before the application is received, then that equipment becomes ineligible.
There are probably several people on this call right now to whom that exact dynamic applies. So I really want to underscore that. Anyone who is interested in doing this, communicate with us clearly and specifically that, hey, I'm interested in the REAP grant, and we will try and time your order and all of your applications so that we are not in any way putting you in peril of receiving that grant funding.
And then
Macy,
the last
one more question. What is this proceed at your own risk part of the deadline and the application date?
So under the statute, it does state that if you're applying for the grant, then it's not 100% going to be awarded. So it is a competitive process. So you can apply, but that does not mean funds will be awarded. So proceed at your own risk. Don't bet on the USDA funds to make your project happen. And with the 100% commitment of funds required, no one will be able to do that because you'll have to have full funding for your project to have a complete application.
So you can, what that means is you can submit your application on September 30th. You can receive the notice of receipt from the USDA. You can then go ahead and proceed with your project before getting the award from the USDA, which typically takes about 3 months. About 90 days is the average. There's no guarantee that you're going to be awarded that grant, right? So that's the proceed at your own risk. You could place your application in September 30th and then wait that 90 days. And then if you get awarded the grant, then you can move forward. But if you move forward before the award is given you 90 days post application, you're proceeding at your own risk, meaning there's not a 100% guarantee that you will be awarded the grant funding. So I just wanted to specify that part of it.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is what is the benefit? And the benefit is 50% of total eligible costs. So your project can be more than $2 million, but you're going to max out at that $1 million for the grant funding.
Caitlin and Macy, if you'd underline one thing that you mentioned yesterday, I think was very valuable. You said that this should be viewed very much as reimbursement funds.
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit in the compliance part of it. But in order to receive the grant funding, you're just going to have to go ahead and proceed after, either before or after the award is given you, spend the money, and then the grant is a reimbursement. It's not an upfront award.
Terrific.
We covered this a little, but what is a qualified small business? So, as mentioned before, projects must be located in a rural area with population of 50,000 residents or less. And that's going to be based off of the most current census data. So as of right now, I believe that is 2020. And then you also must meet the Small Business Administration size standards based off of your NAICS code. And that could be based off of head count of employees or revenue. It depends on what type of business you're in. But for biomass facilities, which is what a number of attendees will fall under, it's going to be less than 500 employees.
Yeah, and it's very different depending on your industry. So if you're not a biomass producer, which I think there's a couple people attending today that are in different industries, let us know. We can look it up to see what the thresholds are for your industry. For instance, I looked up one the other day for an energy efficiency project for a glass production facility, and that was 1,200 employees. So it varies very, very much depending on your industry.
Yes.
So even though this is Department of Agriculture, agriculture is not our limiting factor here, correct?
No, agriculture is not the limiting factor here. Renewable systems and energy efficiency is. So the USDA is really looking for systems and efficiency technology that's going to support renewable energy and green energy.
Thank you.
Yes. So all projects must have a technical merit and utilize commercially available technology. ElectraTherm meets that definition with flying stars. So they are technology ready, commercially available. They are great equipment to qualify for this REAP grant program. Other technology qualifies as well, which we'll get into a little bit more, but the technology readiness level is going to be a factor in that. We want to make sure we're at a level of 8, 9, or above.
Yeah, that's why it's important to have the right partners for these projects, and that your vendors have been, evaluated, and that their technology is proven. Because some vendors out there are great, right? They have these innovative ideas, but if they're not proven, they wouldn't be able to qualify for this. So it's always good to know who you're getting your supplies and your equipment from.
And then the project must not start until the grant application is accepted. So on September 30th, if you submit your application before September 30th, on September 30th, they're going to close application acceptance. And then within a week, they'll send a little note or an email out saying your application has been received and is under review. That notifies you that you did submit a complete application and that you are under review for the REAP grant. And then you can start the project.
Hey, Macy, what if I miss the September 30th deadline and the next deadline's like in December? And I say, oh, I missed September 30th, but I submitted it October 2nd. I can just go ahead and spend the money, right?
You cannot spend the money until you receive that notice from the USDA saying that a complete application was received and it's under review. Most USDA offices will not send this until after the next deadline date. So if you submit it September 15th, you probably won't receive this until the first week of October, but it's dependent on how the USDA offices ran.
Right. And USDA offices across the country vary in their responsiveness. So just warning you there that not everyone is uniform, and that they get back to you right away.
I would always bet on after the deadline.
Macy and Caitlin, if they did grow into the next deadline, and I just want to underscore this, it is so that no one thinks, oh, well, if I miss September 30th, there's another one coming around. If they intend to stack this with the income tax credit as well, what are their chances of being able to do that stackability if they get into the next quarter, if they miss this September 30th deadline?
Yeah, that's part of the strategy, Natalie, that we talked about yesterday, and I'm glad you brought that up. So for those of you that are pursuing the investment tax credit for your projects, in order to safe harbor the maximum bonus credits that are there for this year, so that could be up to 30, 40, 50% of your total cost for your project if you're producing electricity by using the ORC, you have to get started before the end of the year. So, and to safe harbor, there's different requirements there. So from the investment tax credit, I'm not discussing the REAP right now. I'm just talking about investment tax credit. That means that it's either spending 5% of your total project budget, having your contracts formalized, having permits pulled, or having boots on the ground. So that's how you safe harbor your investment tax credit. However, if you're wanting to layer on the REAP, I strongly suggest submitting your REAP grant September 30th so that you can be approved by December, and then you can, go ahead and spend all the money you want to safe harbor your ITC. And that's if you need that guarantee that you're going to get the REAP. If you don't need the guarantee to do the REAP, submit your application September 30th. The first week of October, once you've gotten the response from your USDA rep, go ahead and start establishing the safe harbor. So enter into contracts, pull your permits, start spending money, have boots on the ground. And that way you can secure both the REAP and the ITC.
Perfect. Thank you.
So what can funds be used for? Funds can only be used for qualified equipment under the REAP program. So we're going to look at the ORC and pyrolysis system, geothermal systems, hydropower systems. Anything on this list is going to be deemed qualified equipment. And when we do our REAP application, we would allocate the funds towards the specified equipment that fits your facility. This is the only equipment that you cannot pay the invoice on for the grant. So if you've started your project and you have men on the ground working, but you have not purchased your organic racane cycle from ElectraTherm yet, you can still turn in your REAP application. And as long as you don't purchase that until you receive that review of application notice from the USDA, you are okay.
Yeah, because I know even some people on this call have finished their biomass project, right? They're creating pellets. They're thinking about the ORC. The ORC is the reason that they're going to be qualifying for the investment tax credit, and the ORC is the reason that you can qualify for this REAP. So if you're going to purchase that ORC, wait until after the September 30th deadline in order to make that purchase.
You also might see that there's a note under energy efficiency improvements and renewable energy systems saying that an energy audit or assessment is required. So for renewable energy systems, like the organic racane cycles, this energy audit or assessment is not required until funds are being released. So you can receive the grant, be awarded for it, and then when your project is complete and you're submitting for reimbursement, you'll have to submit an energy audit with that. However, energy efficiency improvement projects, they need to have an energy audit prior to the application. So it is actually part of their application. And to be considered for the REAP grant, you have to submit that on the September 30th deadline.
Yeah, so that glass manufacturer I referenced before, they would qualify under this energy efficiency improvements. And so therefore they would have to have the environmental study prior to submitting the application. Whereas our biomass friends that are on this call don't have to have it prior to the application, but if awarded, then they would have to go through the environmental study.
And that environmental study will be required to be done by a third party and will be submitted to the USDA.
Caitlin and Macy, just offhand, from that prior, we are talking primarily about biomass today, but if we do have people who are very interested in the refrigeration or the other energy efficiency, the portions, they can reach out to you directly for additional information on those provisions, correct?
Correct. Yes, we have experience submitting all different types of REAP grants. We just are focusing on biomass today, but if you have other projects that would fall under those qualifications, reach out. We're happy to help with any type of qualifier.
Fantastic.
So what is the application process? So step one, we're going to determine eligibility. That's what this webinar is for. We're helping everyone determine that they are eligible and should apply on the September 30th deadline and contact us. Step two, after you've decided you're going to apply, is we need to be registered with sam.gov. And this is a program that the government has instilled that allows the government to track funding through various grants, credits, and incentives. And you get a unique ID number when you register with SAM, and that is required on your application. We don't want to put off registering with SAM because it can take 7 to 8 days to get the registration processed, and they stick by that 7 to 8 days.
Yeah, and we should probably have put on there like log on and make sure that you have all the credentials for your sam.gov, because we've had clients tell us, yeah, we have a sam.gov unique ID, but on the day of the application, we're scrambling because they forgot how to log in. So 2 weeks prior, make sure all your ducks are in a row, make sure that you can log in and submit the application.
Yeah. SAM is run by the General Services Administration, and so I would just tell everyone this is a government operation. It's heavy on the general and light on the services. So yeah, cannot underscore that enough. If you need this, set it up now. Do not wait. That is not a last minute item.
Yes. Step three is to gather necessary documentation. My steps got a little bit off here, but step 4 would be to complete the required forms. That's where Katie Andrews comes in, and we help with that. We get that package completely ready to go out the door with the right merits, assignments, qualifications, and writing there. And then step 6 is submit the application and wait for that notice to be sent out that you've submitted your application and it's under review, and then hopefully it's awarded.
Yes. And I would take this
go ahead.
just take this moment to say, underscore again, this is a competitive grant. Anyone who's considering ORC, this is a competitive grant. I'm going to say that one more time. This is a competitive grant. That means that people that have been in the batting box a long time have a higher batting average. If you're considering this, I highly recommend that you reach out to Katie Andrews and allow them to assist you with this grant application. It will greatly increase your likelihood of success. Not that everyone here isn't very bright and very capable, but time in the batter's box makes a difference. So give yourself every opportunity for success.
Yeah, and I also think under step 1, Macy, we should add develop strategy, because some of the people on the webinar today have multiple projects under development. So, what do they do? Can they submit multiple applications for, different projects? What is your guidance there, Macy?
They can submit multiple applications, but it's a by state application. So if you have 2 projects in one state, you're only going to submit one application. But if you have 2 projects in 2 states, then you're going to submit 2 applications. One thing to note is it does max out at 1 million in funding. So we would review both projects. If both are needed to hit that maximum value of 1 million, we would structure our application that way. If only one is needed to hit that maximum value of 1 million, we're going to take the project that's most likely to receive funding.
Yeah, we're going to bet on the right horse, the fastest horse, the one that will catch the eye of the USDA during their review.
Absolutely. So once we get through the application process, kind of what is your role in the application process and what is Katie Andrews' role in the application process? So the applicant will provide us with the required documentation, with information on the project, and with financials, which are required to have a complete application. Katie Andrews will take all of that information, we'll prepare the forms, we'll do the technical writing and the feasibility writing. we'll put it all in an application package, and then we'll coordinate with the local USDA representative to confirm all T's are crossed and all I's are dotted, and then submit that directly to them. So what is required documentation and project information? It is quite a long list. This covers mainly the items you will have to provide, and you can just see here it is an extensive process with a lot of documentation required. Most of these items companies have internally, but going through and organizing them and getting them in the right spots and the right format, that's where we come in and make sure everything's done very cleanly in the right order with our experience in this grant.
Yeah, so part of the hard part of getting this done is organizing everything. And so we have a secure Dropbox through Citrix, and you just take documents that have one or all of these information to it. You just drop it in there, and then we go through and dissect and organize everything and put it in the right format for the application. So we try to take as much of the heavy lifting off of your plate because our experts can do it a lot more efficiently. Oh,
And-
Macy, on that, let's go back one second. I have a question. So on project cost, are we going to need like total project cost? Is this the ORC and the, production facility, or is it just the ORC? What do we do here?
We want it all. So we want to know how much is it going to take, or what's the project cost breakdown to get this facility up and operational. But then we also want to know what is the ORC and pyrolysis component of that, because that's what our qualifying costs are. But when we present this to the USDA, we're not just presenting the energy efficiency system, we're submitting your company and your project and how it's going to come in and make this big difference. And by implementing this renewable energy system, it's being mindful about the environment as it's doing so. And so the grant's going to be awarded if you have eligible equipment, but what makes your company stand out is that background of what you're doing and you have all the information that's needed. So they want the whole profile, even though the eligible costs pertain to the equipment.
So the commitment of funds, that's for the whole project, that you have to have commitment and funds for the whole project, not just commitment and funds for the ORC.
That is correct.
Okay.
I don't know about you guys, but as a non-accountant, I'm looking at the list on the financials and what's associated with that. And that seems like a significant amount of documentation. Are you guys, when that's submit to you by someone that perhaps has never put together pro forma previously, or maybe doesn't even have what format their past 3 years income statement needs to include, are you able to give them to tease through that and say this is missing, that is missing, and we need a little more here or there?
We have to be really conscious of that. We're not an accounting firm, and so we have to toe the line on what type of advice we can have on developing financials. So we can refer them to, a source that might be able to help them. But for the most part, if you're a company that's met with a bank in the past or have investors that you're having to report to, hopefully you have at least a very high level understanding of these types of financials. But we can provide some guidance, but we cannot actually do them for you because we're not an accounting firm.
But if you saw an obvious red flag, you would be able to communicate that to them?
Yes, we want a successful application. So any red flags, we will bring that up because we want every one of our clients to be successful with this.
Terrific.
So compliance and monetization, that's kind of the end all. So after the application is received and the funds have been awarded, there's going to be a compliance aspect of it where your company will have to report on certain milestones that were outlined in the application and confirm that it met these expectations that we presented to the USDA. Without those compliance aspects, you won't be able to monetize it. So that's the energy audit we were talking about. That's a report on these are the funds that were spent, we're up and operational. These are the production, this is the production we're doing now. Depending on how the application structured, that compliance aspect is going to look a little bit different, but it is required. So once the award notice has been issued and you are aware that you are an awardee of the USDA REAP grant, then we would help you prepare this compliance documentation. After the completion of the project, we would gather your energy audit that was completed by a third party, and then we would submit this information to the USDA for them to review. Once reviewed and approved, they will release funding. This funding can be all at once or it can be in stages, and it's going to be dependent on how your application is structured. So if you're going to do an organic rate cane cycle now and then maybe another one in a year, then, and we put both on the same application, they'll release the funding for the first one once it's purchased, and then in a year, they'll release the funding for the second one once it's purchased.
That's a great point.
So all of the compliance and monetization we assist with as well.
Man, good timing, Macy. Do we have 15 minutes left? Is that right? For questions?
Yes, on the nose. Nailed it.
Oh, all right.
Perfect. That was my goal.
All right, let me pull up some of the questions and we can see. And if you haven't posted your question, but you have questions, go ahead and post it so that we can go through some of them. Let's see here. Let's start with, is it only for projects in the US? Yes. So this is a USDA program, so only in the continental US and territories are these eligible. So if you're in Guam or Puerto Rico, yes, you would also qualify, but if you're in Europe, no. 50,000 people per jurisdiction. What is that, Macy? Is that municipality? Is that county? How does that work?
So it'll be so it gets a little hairy. We'll have to review when we're doing the specific application. If you're in a city limit, it's going to be in the city limit. If you're in a county, then it'll be the closest neighboring city. But sometimes there's multiple, so we have to look at how it falls, and then the local USDA rep offers guidance on that as well.
Yeah, that's part of it, is having that direct line to our USDA reps, because we've done these over and over and over again, but there's, every application's unique. You never know exactly what you're going to come across. And I really love our relationship that we have with our USDA reps across the country that help us kind of maneuver some of those intricacies. What is
as a follow-on to that, Macy, if someone did have multiple sites within one state, if they were doing one application inside a state, that 50,000 limit, is it combined or is it 50,000 per project so that there'd be 100,000 total perhaps?
It's per location. So that's another item we would review. If we're submitting an application for 2 projects in one state, we'd review the head count or the population in one area and the other, but it would be separate areas. So you can do 100,000 together, but it's going to be 50,000 for location A and 50,000 for location B.
Very good. I'm just sure that was a question in someone's mind.
So if we were, this is not the population of DFW, but if we were doing one project in Dallas and one in Fort Worth, both of those cities would have to be below the $50,000 metric. If one is 50,000 people and one is 75,000 people, the one with 75,000 people would not qualify. We could only then do the one with 50,000. Okay.
That's outstanding.
What is the cost of Macy and the team putting together a REAP grant? Everyone's very different, but a lot of times we do them success-based fee, and it depends on how many applications we're going to do and how complex that is. So send us an email. Here's our emails. We would love to have a one-on-one, hear more about your project, come up with a strategy, and then we can talk cost once we know a little bit more about that.
I see Michael Gorman dropped a link in for checking site eligibility. That was very kind. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, what are the efficiency measurements and verification requirements? I'm not sure on that one. That are you talking about the environmental study? Is that what you're talking about?
I think it might be about the energy assessment or audit. And if it is, that's going to be completely dependent on the equipment that's placed in service.
I think they're asking perhaps if there is an efficiency threshold for eligibility.
So it's dependent on the project and the equipment that's placed in service. So there is on the energy efficiency system side, but it's in comparison to what they were doing before, or in comparison to what a similar baseline facility that's established.
Macy, why don't you go back up to that slide where it has the two qualifications?
I think
go down
right here.
There we go. Yeah. So if you're applying under the energy efficiency improvements, let's say that you're putting solar panels on the roof, or you're one of those industries that's not listed on the left. So maybe you're concrete aggregate producer, glass manufacturer, distribution center. Therefore, you don't qualify as on the left, you qualify on the right under energy efficiency improvements. In this case, there are metrics and thresholds on how much efficiency you're achieving by your project, and that is where the environmental study comes in. So we've done one for solar panels on a distribution center before, and so we had to present the existing energy use of the project, and then we had to show the efficiency improvements by using the solar panels. And that has to be done in the application, before the application, if you're qualifying as an energy efficiency improvement there on the right. If you're qualifying as a renewable energy system there on the left, so that's biomass, geothermal, hydropower, hydrogen, wind, solar, ocean. Well, I'm just going to say wind, solar, ocean. We should probably talk about, it could be both. It could be energy efficiency improvement, or it could be renewable energy system. But anyways, for the biomass, geothermal, hydropower, hydrogen, you don't have to show the level of efficiency that's created until after the application is submitted. So that's part of that environmental study that's done if you're awarded. Sorry, it gets a little complex sometimes with the various qualifications. Okay. Macy, do you know if they get awarded a grant, how long is typically the award good for?
So the award it has to be monetized within 3 years, because your project has to be completed within 2 years.
So you have to, once you're awarded, you have to install it, have it operational, do all of your filings within 2 years? Or
yes,
is it you have
correct.
to get it up and running within 2 years, and then that last year is for you to do all of your filings and reimbursement and compliance?
So you can do it, your project can be over the course of 2 years. Once that everything's up and running and purchased, you'll have to do your compliance reporting, your energy assessment, and then at that point, the funds will be released. Of course, every USDA office works differently, and in our experience, all of them have been very understanding and are willing to work with companies as long as everything is communicated effectively and early.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's where having that relationship with the existing USDA is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, we stress transparency and honesty always with USDA reps, because they're people and they understand that, you know, different circumstances affect timelines and spend, and so it's always best to be upfront with them so that they can help if it's at all possible. Macy, are there states where the REAP grant has been more successful than others? I would imagine since it's USDA, it's kind of like the breadbasket or whatever states are more ag centric, but do you have any insight there?
So I don't know that if they've been more or targeted, as being more successful, or that there's just more applicants in those states because of either the higher rural area or the higher agricultural industry that's in those states. But Kansas, Kentucky, both have really high
West
REAP grant
Virginia.
awards. West Virginia, North Carolina, Oklahoma, kind of that southern southeast region. We see a lot of awards coming out of, but every state has a USDA program, and you can qualify and apply in any state, and every state can award USDA funding. It's just having the applications there.
Right. And it doesn't matter what state you're in as far as being shiny and more attractive for the USDA to award you or not. Macy makes a great point. It's just some states get awarded more REAP because they're more they have a larger agriculture industry in that state and therefore utilize USDA funds a lot more frequently than some states that are not as agriculture heavy in their industry sector.
I'm sure the extent the activity of or how ferocious and animated the extension offices are in some of those areas probably plays a role as well in terms of people being outreach, so that people are aware of this type of grant opportunity. So
yeah,
hopefully what we're doing is assisting with that outreach in all 50 states.
Yeah, the funny thing, and then we can wrap up here in a minute. Macy recently called one of our USDA reps, and his voicemail said he was still out for COVID, so and working remotely. So that's when it's handy to have their direct line and know how to find them because they might not be checking their office voicemail. So wrapping up, I think we've handled all the Q&A questions. I just want to thank ElectraTherm for putting this together. We are always going to bring you any ideas for funding that we find from the government, and you are so good about extending invitations to webinars to all of your customers. So thank you so much. My last thing I want to say is, we're expecting to submit a lot of grant applications September 30th. So contact us soon. Be ready to be responsive, because I know it's September 30th. It seems like it's a month away, and it is a month away, but that month will fly by. So it's best to get started as early as possible. But we look forward to hearing from you guys.
Yes. And thank you to both of you, Caitlin and Macy. You've been extraordinarily supportive of everyone that I know has been working with you. They've done nothing but, sing your praises. Couldn't be happier about the support that you've given to all of the ElectraTherm and pyrolysis application folks that we have sent your way. So thank you for your ongoing expertise and guidance in those areas. And we know that everyone that does apply with you is going to have a heck of a solid edge in their application. So we're looking forward to hearing about all the successes that come from it.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you everyone for attending today. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to speaking with you soon.
Outstanding. Hope everyone has a fantastic Tuesday. Thank you for joining us, as always. And if you need anything, reach out to any of us directly. All of our contact information is on the slide. We look forward to hearing from you.